Can you actually help me with these bins for once, Timothy? He didn't look up from his phone. He was leaning against the garage door frame, scrolling through something while the humidity already made my t-shirt stick to my back. It was barely 10 in the morning on a Sunday, and the Nashville air was already thick enough to chew. I gripped the plastic handles of the bins and hauled them toward the curb, the wheels catching on a rogue pebble and jerking my shoulder. We had the Costco run scheduled for 11. I had the list on the fridge, the coupons pulled up on my phone, and Cody's travel soccer fees due by midnight. The app for the club had sent 3 reminders this morning. Everything in our house felt like a subscription or a fee these days. Between the gig work fluctuations and the sports schedules, I spent half my life managing a digital calendar that never stopped blinking. I went back into the garage to grab the reusable bags. Timothy's golf bag was slumped against the wall, blocking the path to the pantry door. I shoved it aside with my foot, but the strap caught on a nail, tipping the bag over. A small black object slid out from a side pocket and skittered across the concrete. It was a phone. Not his iPhone, but a cheap plastic burner. I picked it up. The screen lit up with a notification. It wasn't a text from a woman or a secret message. It was an automated alert from a clinic billing portal. A payment confirmation for a balance on an account I didn't recognize. The date on the notification was last Tuesday. Timothy had told me he was in Memphis for a site visit with Sarah Banks that entire week. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the power button. I didn't think affair. I thought billing error. Timothy was haphazard with his expenses, and Sarah ran their business partnership like a chaotic whirlwind. He probably had some old medical debt, or a legacy insurance claim, from before we married that was finally catching up to him, and the system was glitching. I put the phone back in the pocket and shoved the bag against the wall. "We're leaving in 10 minutes. I yelled toward the house. He called back. He sounded bored. I spent the drive to Costco thinking about the billing alert. I didn't want to be Anna V. Cabrera who interrogated her husband over a random clinic charge. It sounded dramatic. I didn't want to look like I was hovering, especially not with the group texts from the other soccer moms. Already blowing up my phone about the carpool for next weekend. Once we got home and Cody was in his room playing games, I sat at the kitchen table. I called the billing office listed in the notification. I stayed on hold for 22 minutes, listening to a distorted version of a pop song that looped every 30 seconds. When a woman finally answered, she sounded like she had been awake since 1994. "I think there's a billing error on my husband's account," I told her. "I'm seeing charges for a patient I don't recognize. I can't disclose any patient information or account details without the primary policyholder's authorization or a signed HIPAA release." The woman said, "I'm his wife. I'm on the primary insurance plan. The billing portal is for a separate medical financing line, not the primary insurance. Unless you are a cosigner on this specific credit account, I cannot verify the patient's name or the services rendered." I didn't have a cosigner agreement. I had a notification on a burner phone I wasn't supposed to see. Tried to explain that I just wanted to verify if the account was in Timothy's name, but she kept reading from a script. She told me the account holder had to call back or visit the office with a government ID to authorize my access. I hung up. The screen on my laptop timed out, forcing me to log back into the school portal to pay Cody's fees. The password didn't work on the first try. I typed it again, slower this time. I decided to call my mother-in-law, Diane. She and Timothy were close. Too close, sometimes, and she usually knew the specifics of his health history and family obligations. I figured she'd just tell me he was helping an old relative with some medical bills or that there was a pharmacy authorization error. "Hi, Diane," I said when she picked up. "Anna, dear, are you coming to dinner tonight?" "Yes, we'll be there." "Listen, I was looking at some of the billing stuff, and I noticed a weird charge from a clinic last Tuesday. Did Timothy mention helping someone with medical expenses, or maybe an old insurance claim?" There was a pause. It was only a few seconds, but it was long enough to be weird. "Medical expenses?" Diane asked. "Why would he need to handle that?" "He has his own coverage, just a weird charge." I thought maybe it was something related to his family. "Well, he didn't mention it to me," Diane said. Her voice was too bright. "Anyway, make sure you bring that potato salad you make. We have a lot to discuss tonight." Timothy's parents have some ideas about updating the insurance beneficiaries that they want to run by you both. Beneficiaries? Just some paperwork things. Very boring. See you at 6. She hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand. Our healthcare plan was a joint benefit through his employer, and I was the primary beneficiary. I didn't know why paperwork things required a family dinner. I looked at the golf bag in the garage. I didn't go back to check the phone. I just started chopping the potatoes. I finished the potatoes and put them in a Tupperware bowl with a tight lid. I didn't look at the golf bag again, so just focused on the way the knife felt against the cutting board, the rhythmic thud of the vegetables, and the sound of Cody yelling at his headset in the other room. The drive to Diane's was quiet. Timothy stared straight ahead, his hands gripping the steering wheel at 10 and 2. He didn't ask about my day, and I didn't ask about Memphis. The humidity had broken into a light, sticky drizzle that blurred the windshields of the cars around us on the way through the neighborhood. Diane's house smelled like cinnamon and old upholstery. She greeted us with a hug that lasted a second too long, her eyes darting to Timothy. Cody went straight to the living room to find a charger for his phone, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the adults. The potato salad looks lovely, Anna, Diane said, taking the bowl from me. I said. We sat at the mahogany dining table, the one Timothy's father had bought 20 years ago. Timothy started talking about the business, mentioning a new contract Sarah was drafting. He sounded normal. He sounded like the man I'd been married to for 14 years, not someone who kept a plastic burner phone in a golf bag. Then Diane cleared her throat. About the insurance, Diane said. Timothy and his father were talking. With the way the tax laws are shifting, it makes more sense to update the beneficiaries on the primary policies. Just a few forms to sign. It keeps everything streamlined for the family. I stared at my plate. I wanted to sound calm. Wanted to be Anna V. Cabrera, who didn't make a scene at a family dinner. I'm sure it's fine, I said, my voice sounding a bit too high. I mean, as long as it doesn't interfere with the current coverage. Even with that weird clinic charge from last Tuesday, I'm sure we can just figure out the paperwork. The silence that followed was immediate. Timothy stopped chewing. He didn't look at me. He looked at his water glass. What clinic charge? Timothy asked. The one from the portal, I said. On the phone. I tried to call the office, but they wouldn't tell me anything because of HIPAA. Timothy finally looked at me. His eyes were narrow. Why were you going through my things, Anna? The bag fell over, I said. The phone just slid out. It's a business phone, he said. Sarah and I use them for certain site visits to keep the personal lines clear. The clinic thing was probably a glitch or a corporate billing error. It's not a big deal. Then why is it on a burner? It's for security, he snapped. Can we just have dinner? Diane jumped in, her voice bright and forced. Now. Let's not let a little billing error ruin the evening. The beneficiary update is the important part. It's just a formality for the estate. I didn't say anything else. I spent the rest of the meal thinking about Cody's soccer schedule. We had a game on Wednesday, and the carpool was a mess. If Timothy and I were in a standoff, I couldn't rely on him for the 4 p.m. pickup. I pulled out my phone under the table and checked the group text with the other moms. 3 of them were already arguing about who was taking the kids to the hotel in Franklin next month. When we got home, Timothy went straight to the bedroom and shut the door. I went to the kitchen and opened my laptop. I logged into the employer benefits portal. I had the password because we shared everything. Or I thought we did. I navigated to the Life and Health tab. The page took forever to load, the spinning blue circle mocking me for a full minute before the dashboard finally popped up. Under the Account Activity section, there was a notification in a small yellow box. Beneficiary adjustment request documentation pending. I stared at the screen. My heart hammered against my ribs. I didn't think about the estate or the tax laws Diane had mentioned. I thought about the clinic. Assumed the insurance company had flagged the payment from the burner phone's account and was now asking for the HIPAA release. The billing clerk had mentioned on the phone. I tried to click the notification to see what documentation was missing, but the portal timed out. A white screen appeared with a message saying, "Session expired. Please log in again." I typed the password again. This time, the page loaded, but the notification was gone. I refreshed the browser 3 times. Nothing. I picked up my phone and called Jen. Jen was a friend from the neighborhood who worked in HR for a logistics company. She was the kind of person who read the entire employee handbook for fun and asked boring, useful questions. "He's changing the beneficiaries," Jen asked. "Did he say which ones? Life insurance, 401k, or the health plan dependents?" "I don't know," I said. "Diane mentioned tax laws. I saw a beneficiary adjustment note in the portal, but it disappeared." "That's weird," Jen said. "Usually, a beneficiary change for a spouse requires a signed acknowledgement or a notary if it's for a primary asset." "Did you get an email confirmation?" "No." "Check your spam. And check the documents folder. In the portal. If it's a legal change, there has to be a PDF of the request form." I spent the next hour digging through the portal's document archive. I found a dozen boring things. A summary of benefits, a dental provider list, a notice about a new pharmacy network. Nothing about beneficiaries. I felt a sudden sharp need to talk to someone who wasn't involved in my life. The next morning, I went into the office early. I waited until the break room was empty before I walked over to Elena. Elena had been with the company for 10 years and knew where all the bodies were buried. She was the only person I could speak to without the news hitting the neighborhood group chat by noon. "Elena," I said, leaning against the counter. "If someone wanted to change a beneficiary on a corporate plan without the spouse noticing, could they do it?" Elena looked at me, her expression flat. "Depends on the plan. Some are automatic. Some require a signature." "Why?" "Just wondering about some paperwork." "If you're worried," Elena said, "don't look at the portal. Look at the payroll deductions. If the beneficiary change is tied to a new policy or a separate trust, the premiums might shift. Check the pay stubs." I thanked her and went back to my desk. I opened the payroll app on my phone, scrolled through the last 3 months of Timothy's stubs. The numbers were the same. The deductions were identical. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. I had a burner phone in the garage, a weird clinic charge, and a mother-in-law talking about tax laws. But the paperwork didn't show a thing. Decided to just wait until Wednesday's soccer game to see if Timothy would actually help with the pickup. Wednesday afternoon arrived with a heavy gray sky that threatened a downpour. The humidity clung to the pavement, making the air feel like a wet blanket. I pulled into the school pickup line at 3:45 p.m., the line of SUVs stretching back half a block, engines idling in a low, vibrating hum. Timothy texted me at 3:50 p.m. "Can't make pickup. Meeting with Sarah ran long." I didn't reply. I sat in the car and watched a stray piece of trash tumble across the asphalt. Had told him on Tuesday that I needed him to handle the 4 p.m. pickup so I could organize the carpool for the Franklin trip. He had agreed. He was with Sarah. Cody climbed into the back seat, dropping his heavy gear bag on the floor with a thud. He didn't look at me, his headphones on and eyes glued to his phone. "How was practice?" I asked. "Fine," he mumbled. I drove him home, the windshield wipers swiping once every few seconds to clear the mist. When we got inside, I realized Cody's inhaler was almost empty. I drove to the pharmacy on the way to the grocery store. The pharmacist, a thin man with glasses perched on the tip of his nose, looked at his screen and then at me. "Insurance is bouncing this," he said. "It says the dependent coverage is pending a status update." "That's impossible," I said. "I'm the primary beneficiary on the health plan. It's a joint corporate policy. The system is flagging a beneficiary adjustment. You might need to call your provider." I stood there for a moment, the smell of antiseptic and old greeting cards filling my nose. I didn't make a scene. Paid for the medication out of pocket, using the debit card, the transaction taking a few seconds too long to process. Once I got home, I called the insurance company's member services line, thinking it was a simple clerical error. I spent 40 minutes on hold, listening to a distorted version of Girl from Ipanema. When a representative finally answered, she followed a rigid script. "I can certainly help you with your coverage inquiry," she said in a monotone voice. "Can you please verify your zip code and the last 4 digits of the policyholder's social security number?" I gave the information. "I see the account," she said. "However, for the specific riders on this policy, I am unable to disclose the nature of the adjustment due to privacy restrictions. You will need to contact the primary account holder or check your digital correspondence." "I am the spouse," I said, my voice rising slightly. "Why is it a privacy restriction? I apologize for the inconvenience. Is there anything else I can assist you with today? Frustrated, I logged into the member portal. I skipped the dashboard and went directly to the digital mailbox. There was one new message. A PDF titled Notice of Coverage Change, Spousal Waiver. I opened the file. The letter was short. It stated that the primary beneficiary for the life insurance and the long-term disability riders had been updated. Under the section Reason for Waiver, the text read, Spousal rights waived per prenuptial agreement submitted and notarized on June 12, 2009. I stared at the date. June 12, 2009. We got married on August 20, 2009. We never had a prenuptial agreement. We didn't even have a lawyer for the wedding. We did it at a small chapel with a few family members and a generic officiant. I tried to file a formal dispute through the portal's compliance link, but the system returned an automated message stating that benefit adjustment disputes required a notarized affidavit and a 30-day internal review period before a representative could be assigned. The next morning at work, I found myself standing in the break room, waiting for the coffee to brew. I looked around to make sure no one was listening. I leaned toward Elena, a coworker I'd known for 5 years, the only person I felt I could speak to without it getting back to the neighborhood. Elena, this is a weird question, I whispered. Do you know if people ever just sign waivers for insurance? Like, for tax reasons? I saw something on my portal and I can't tell if it's a glitch or a real thing. Elena frowned, stirring her sugar. I don't know. My husband handles all that. Why? Did something change? I think there's a mistake, I said quickly, stepping back as my boss walked into the room. Just a glitch. Never mind. I didn't want to look dramatic. I didn't want to be the woman having a crisis in the office. Went back to my desk and took a photo of the waiver on my screen with my phone, emailing the image to a private Gmail account I used for freelance work. It was a small, narrow step, but it felt like the only thing I could control. Timothy walked through the front door at 6:15 p.m. He looked tired, his tie loosened, smelling faintly of the rain and expensive coffee. Hey, he said, tossing his keys on the counter. Cody get his homework done? He's in his room, I said. I stayed leaning against the kitchen island, trying to keep my voice light and casual. I had a weird issue at the pharmacy today. The insurance was bouncing Cody's inhaler. I think there's a glitch with a document from June 2009. Timothy froze. He didn't move for 3 seconds. Then he turned to look at me, his expression shifting from tired to guarded. You're checking the portal? He asked. I realized too late that I had been too specific. By mentioning the date, I had revealed that I hadn't just seen a glitch at the pharmacy, but had dug into the files. I just wanted to see why the medication was blocked, I said, my voice wavering. You're spying on me, he said, his voice dropping. You're digging through my business accounts and my insurance. This is exactly why I can't trust you with the estate planning. Estate planning? I asked. Is that why you're waiving my rights to the policy? It's for tax purposes. Anna, it's a legal structure Sarah and I discussed for the business. It's not a big deal. You're making it a big deal. A forged document is a big deal, I said. I didn't forge anything, he snapped. You're imagining things because you're stressed about the soccer. Just leave it alone. He walked past me and went into the bedroom, shutting the door. The click of the latch sounded final. I stood in the kitchen. The house was quiet, except for the distant sound of Cody's game through the wall. I looked at the photo on my phone. The document looked official, the notary's stamp blurred but present. I didn't have a confession, just a boring administrative record and a husband who had lied about the date of our own history. I picked up my phone and checked the group text. The other moms were now arguing about the hotel room assignments in Franklin. I typed I'm fine with any room and hit send. The phone screen dimmed, and I set it face down on the granite counter. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that happens when two people are pretending everything is fine. Timothy stayed in the bedroom for another hour. When he finally came out, he didn't look at me. He went straight to the fridge, grabbed a Gatorade, and asked if Cody had finished his history project. I told him yes. I didn't mention the waiver or the fake date. Spent the next 3 days, acting like the woman who managed the soccer carpool and the laundry. I drove Cody to his practices, handled the hotel bookings for the trip to Franklin, and made sure his gear was cleaned. I chose peace for the sake of the schedule. It was easier to pretend than to deal with Timothy shouting while Cody was in the back seat. On Thursday, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. It was addressed to Resident. Inside was a statement from the clinic Timothy had been visiting. The one he claimed was a billing glitch. The bill was for $4,000, covering specialized diagnostic tests and a treatment plan. It wasn't a glitch. It was a medical necessity he'd been hiding. Paid for through a private medical financing line to keep it off our joint statements. I put the bill back in the envelope and left it on the entryway table. I didn't say a word. Instead, I logged into the employer benefits portal. I spent an hour on hold with a benefits coordinator named Marcus. I told him there had been a discrepancy regarding the spousal waiver Timothy had submitted for his own tax filings. Pointed out that Timothy had filed documents claiming a legal separation of benefits to protect certain assets. If the employee has submitted a waiver of spousal rights to the primary policies for tax or legal separation, Marcus said, then the spouse is no longer eligible as a dependent under the PPO plan. Do you want to proceed with the update? Yes, I said. Please process the removal of Timothy Moore as a dependent. That will trigger a COBRA notice for him, Marcus replied. He'll have 60 days to elect his own coverage. The process took several business days to reflect in the system. During that time, I moved my jewelry and my passport into a small fireproof box in the guest room. I stopped asking Timothy how his day was. I stopped caring about the burner phone in the golf bag. Just focused on the logistics of the Franklin trip. The argument started on Tuesday morning. The Nashville humidity was already heavy, making the air feel thick. Timothy was standing in the kitchen, holding his phone and a printed EOB. He looked pale. Why is this claim denied? He demanded. I submitted the clinic bill to the PPO for reimbursement, and the insurance company sent back a denial. They said I'm not on the plan. I was pouring a bowl of cereal for Cody. I didn't look up. Maybe it's another glitch. It's not a glitch, Anna, I called them. They said my coverage was terminated. He stepped closer, his voice rising. What did you do? I just followed the paperwork, I said. You submitted a waiver claiming separate benefits for your tax purposes. The insurance company decided that since you waived spousal rights, you aren't a dependent. I didn't want to argue with the corporate office, so I let them process the change. Timothy stared at me. The forged document he'd used to try and shield his assets had just stripped him of his health coverage right as he was facing a $4,000 bill for a condition he couldn't tell his family. You can't do that, he whispered. I didn't do it. Your paperwork did. He tried to call Diane, but she didn't pick up. He spent the rest of the afternoon pacing the living room, trying to call the insurance company. Instead, he was told that the removal was processed and that any request for reinstatement was currently pending a manual review of the marriage certificate by the compliance department. A process that would take at least 14 business days. The atmosphere in the house shifted. Timothy stopped talking to me. He spent his evenings in the office with the door locked. I spent my time making a list of everything I owned that didn't have his name on it. The following Saturday, Timothy told me he was heading out for his fantasy football draft with a few guys from the office. He didn't ask me to come, and I didn't offer. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I started. I packed methodically. I put my clothes, my books, and Cody's favorite blankets into the car, took the fireproof box, and the printed copies of the forged waiver. I had already arranged for a small apartment in a different part of Nashville. I spent 3 hours clearing out the guest room and the master closet. I left the furniture and the expensive rugs. Left the mahogany table that Diane loved so much. When the car was full, I walked back into the kitchen. I took my house keys and the spare set from the hook by the door. I laid them side by side on the white quartz island, right next to the stack of unpaid medical bills and the denied insurance claim. I didn't leave a note. I just walked out the front door and closed it behind me. Got into the car, buckled Cody in, and drove toward the new apartment. The apartment is small, and the air conditioner hums with a persistent, metallic rattle that fills the silence. It's a strange kind of quiet. Not the heavy, suffocating stillness of the house in Nashville, where I spent years pretending nothing was wrong, but something lighter. Cody is in the other room. The muffled sounds of his game leaking through the wall. There are no more carefully timed conversations or glances toward the door to see if Timothy Moore is listening. I don't have to wonder which version of the truth he's telling Sarah. Today, I just sit here with my things, listening to the rain start to hit the window pane. I'm wondering if I should be the one to tell Timothy's family the practical details, specifically about the forged prenuptial agreement and the insurance fraud he attempted, or if I should just keep the evidence for the court and let them believe whatever story he's spinning to his parents. The laptop screen glows in the dim light, showing a PDF of the temporary order for child support and custody.